Hello everyone, in today's command video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at Combat Air Patrol / AAW Patrol missions. Now, before I get too carried away here, I do want to say that Combat Air Patrol is one of those subjects that is very complicated and dependent on a lot of different factors. There's no one way to do it well. There's always going to be some kind of compromise that you're going to be making throughout the entire engagement. So first things first, as far as Combat Air Patrol goes, this is the most important fact that you must know, is the fact you can't protect everything at once. Modern aircraft that can travel at extremely high speeds have the ability to cover very large areas. I think of aircraft such as the MiG-21 or MiG-20. The MiG-31, I should say, as well as the MiG-25 have amazing ranges. And you also have aircraft such as the F-104, but that has got a little bit shorter legs, so it's not going to be as effective as covering really long distances. So first of all, with Combat Air Patrol in the really early days before you had reliable long-range radar, you basically used them as an early warning system. Basically, the Combat Air Patrol would have a very wide ring that would basically circulate an area of high-value targets, and then you'd have a much closer one, or you just have aircraft ready to intercept. Now, in World War II, of course, you had the added complication of having to climb up to 36,000 feet, or whatever altitude incoming bombers were at, which was a substantially long time. It took a very serious effort, so it wasn't unusual to keep aircraft in the air pretty much all the time, just because of how long it could take. So let's go ahead and see the scenario. So we're sitting over here over in Israel. We're in the Eastern Mediterranean here. I've got myself my early warning radar batteries here, and I've shut them off because I want to demonstrate one of the methods you can use for setting up a Combat Air Patrol. Now, we happen to know that our opponents up here in Syria have bought themselves some B-29s, and they're probably going to be trying to strike us down here at our airfields. Now, taking a look at the geometry real quickly, what are the possible ways they could come at us? So assuming their neighbors don't let them go through, they can either come out across the ocean and swing back around, or they can take the direct route, which is going to be moving through here. Given that the total distance between their border and us is only about 75 nautical miles, that's probably going to be the more likely option, simply because they know they're going to get spotted at some point, so they're going to want to shorten their strike as much as possible. This is different with modern aircraft. So we're just going to make that assumption real quick. So let's go ahead and set up our Combat Air Patrol. We're going to be using legacy F-51s for this purpose. Again, we have to make sure our Combat Air Patrol is going to cover enough area at the same time as be able to bring enough airborne assets to engage anything that it does detect. So let's go ahead and come up with a basic size here. We'll go ahead and create some areas here. And we're basically going to try to catch them right on the border and then try to engage them pretty much right away. Now, the interesting thing here is there's no navigation zone here, so we don't have to worry about that complication. Now, a word to be said here about how large this area can be. Now, if you want to think of it another way, this particular area that I'm asking these aircraft to cover is this basically 50 nautical miles by, let's see, about 30 nautical miles in that area, which means that if I assign, let's say, one airplane, this is a massive area for it to be looking around, especially if using non-radar detection. Another more mathematical way to approach it is with something like a spreadsheet, like what I have right here. So what this spreadsheet actually does is it lets me define how large the area is, identify how many aircraft I have flying, and then the flight size. And this will give me some really useful information. It'll basically tell me how many square nautical miles I have per aircraft, and then how many square nautical miles I have per flight. So can you imagine a single P-51 having to be responsible for 400 nautical miles of area? That's insane. Now, if I reduce my flight size to 1, that would mean each one is responsible for 200 nautical miles. But keep in mind, as you reduce the size of the flight, you're also going to be decreasing the amount of firepower that flight can bring to bear when it does get to the target. That is, without some very serious coordination on your part. So, for example, if I had 24 aircraft and my flight size was 4, that would give me a tremendous amount of firepower. Again, the lower number is going to be better. And that would also mean I'd have amazing coverage because there'd be so many aircraft in the air at the same time. Now, you probably notice some other features down here that I also put into the spreadsheet. One is my patrol speed, which I believe is about 160, and of course my max speed, which is about 427 for P-51. That's about how much fuel, about how much per minute. Gives me a staggering 6 hours of coverage on station, which is awesome. Now, what does this number really mean? Well, if you go back to the game real quick, let's go back to Tel Aviv Airport here, you'll notice that it takes 3 hours to prepare one of these aircraft. Which means if we can hold them up for at least 3 hours, we can double the amount of aircraft that we have airborne at a given time. That also means that if we use less than 3 hours of endurance, that we're going to run out of aircraft very quickly if we deploy all of these at the same time. Keep in mind, with modern aircraft that have limited missiles, you're going to run out of missiles very quickly and actually be sending people home a lot sooner than you probably expected. So let's go ahead and take a look at my mission now. Control F11. Patrol north. I'll go ahead and give this a good old-fashioned patrol. AAW seems to be pretty solid here. Looks good to me. Let's grab our F-51s, shove them all in there. Now let's think about this. How many aircraft do we need airborne at a time? Well, if you remember a minute ago, if we had a total of 4 aircraft in the air and the flight size was 1, that would mean each aircraft is going to be responsible for 400 square nautical miles. Now, given that P-51s don't have the ability to pack radar and they're looking at everything visually, by the way, there's clouds. This is going to mean that there's not really going to be a lot of coverage. But the good news is I know that in 3 hours, I'm going to have another 8 P-51s ready to go, F-51s. So that tells me it's probably not a bad idea to put all 8 aircraft at the same time. So I'm going to leave my flight size as 1, only on account of the fact that these are early warning aircraft more so than they are interceptors. We can group them up and engage once we know that something is coming. Again, if I have radar against propeller aircraft, this is almost moot because we can just pick them up on radar and deal with them then. The next concern I need to consider is my altitude that I'm going to be operating at. One thing that you'll notice is that enemy bombers would have an amazing time basically using terrain here to mask their approach. Very clever players, of course, would be doing all the zigzagging and going through valleys and stuff like that, meaning my beautiful patrol aircraft at 36,000 feet are never going to detect those enemy bombers. So if this is a situation that you find yourself in, you're going to want to split this into 2 separate missions, which we'll actually do right now. I'm going to call this Patrol Low. And again, the idea here is, yes, I'm technically spreading out my coverage a little bit, but if something gets through or something goes over, it's going to be an issue. And the other thing you want to think about, too, is bombers tended to create a lot of contrails back in the day. So if they're traveling at high altitude, I need less aircraft at high altitude looking for them and more aircraft at low altitude. Now, if there's no clouds today, this wouldn't be a point. We could send everybody at medium altitude and be perfectly fine either direction. Again, you have to be very, very careful how you manage this. So let's go ahead. I'm actually going to unassign everybody real quick because that's just going to cause all sorts of issues. All right, let's go scoot back to my F-51s. 1 through 4 is going to take care of the north. They're going to be transiting. Their station altitude is basically going to be high. I'll put them at 28,000 feet. My low altitude guys are going to keep themselves somewhere around 8,000 feet. Again, if you know your opponent well, you'll be able to predict exactly what altitude that you need to put them at. So let's go ahead and get ourselves, again, we're spreading ourselves a little bit thinner than we need to here. But at the same token, this is guaranteeing that we don't have any leakers. Because remember, these guys are our radar, essentially. So we're going to need to make sure there's a lot of coverage. Set their size, of course, to single aircraft, so they spread themselves out. And we're going to have to manually get them to engage in there during that time. Now, you're probably sitting there going, why don't we just set up a prosecution zone? We're going to get to that a little later on today. So I'm going to make sure that's all set. Actually, I'm going to make sure there's 4 aircraft in the air at a time. I'm going to shut that off. And now we're in great shape. That's basically all there was to it. One thing worth noting, by the way, is that propeller aircraft cruise fairly efficiently. So if we could actually sit there and do the math, but if I recall correctly, even if we told this aircraft to travel at military power at all times, it would still be able to cruise around successfully and stay in the air for a significantly long period of time. Not so true with jet aircraft. You got to watch out for that. So I'm going to tell this aircraft to cruise, which means I'm going to be covering more ground faster. I could even set them all the way up to military to cut even more ground even quicker. But again, there's not really a big difference here, especially if I need that extra endurance. So I'm going to go and tell these guys also to cruise. 8,000 feet. Everything looks good. I am ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. I'm actually going to speed up time and let everybody get going there. Now, these aircraft are principally responsible for early warning so that I can use other aircraft to basically grab them. One quick tip, too, is when they initially go to an area, they're going to spread themselves pretty significantly. I usually like to actually manually kind of tell them where to go the beginning so that they spread themselves out even thinner. Remember, these guys are going to be operating at different altitudes as well. And the idea would be here that we'd spot them, basically group together, engage, and then send more aircraft basically to back us up. Again, depending on the scenario. Something worth noting, by the way, is if you go to your doctrine settings, double check to make sure your interceptors have a setting that makes sense. So if you were to go, for example, where it says weapon state real quickly, you'll notice that my favorite one up here, Winchester, says they run out of ammo and they can use air-to-air guns. This one is, I've run out of ammo, but I still have air-to-air guns, punch out. Take a look at this one. This one is one engagement with a beyond visual range weapon and standoff and then disengage immediately. Another way to think about this is a hit and run, because what I could do is I could select that, grab my authentication here, and set it so that its attack throttle is afterburner, which would mean that this aircraft would zoom up, attack with one engagement, and then turn around and run before the other team would be able to go ahead and intercept it. Again, that's the hit and run style tactic. It's actually pretty effective. So I'm actually going to set this right back to that because we're going to need other things later. Let's go ahead and speed up time. So definitely be cautious with that. That was interesting. Got to be careful when you change missions. Oh, let's go ahead and you guys are going to be patrolling low. You guys are going to be patrolling north. Let's go ahead and, oh, still sped up time here. Be careful. I don't know why they considered that they had already done one engagement, but things like that can happen in command, so watch out for that. Patrol low. Go ahead and grab this guy. Assign to mission. Patrol north. Grab that one. Assign to mission. Patrol low. Grab that one as well. Patrol north. I think one got through. They always do. What a bummer. Good thing I caught that. So be careful setting your doctrine while people are still in the air. The reason they all retreated, by the way, they don't have anything other than air-to-air guns, and that's why they freaked out. So anyway, we sped up time, and we know that at any point we're going to be engaged from that general direction. Again, if this were a wider area that we had to protect, we'd have to be a little more creative here. I'm actually going to order this one to that corner there, just to keep them nice and spread out. Now, the lucky thing for us is groups of bombers are kind of big, so they're kind of easy to spot. Again, at any point I could have flipped my radar on and spotted these guys right away, but I'm trying to demonstrate the way that you basically have to do this. Now, if this were a carrier situation, we can use the exact same technique. Let's see how our enemy bombers are doing, by the way. We immediately can identify they're way the heck up here. We don't know what altitude they are because we want to see if this technique actually works by the time they get there. They're all B-29As, so they're not exactly known for their high speed or high performance or anything along those lines. The cool thing, though, is check this out. We have 3 hours and 41 minutes of airtime here. We could even speed them up if we wanted to cover our coverage quicker. It's a technical term, covering your coverage. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and let things kind of patrol as they do here. Apparently there's an enemy ship group out there. We're going to deal with them next. I have my own way of dealing with them, but you'll see in a moment. So again, this is without radar. If we had radar, we basically could pick them up 3 hours in advance and send a really clever intercept party in an ambush format to basically take them right out away. And honestly, that strategy works great at sea where there's not a lot of radar places to hide, other than the standard horizon. Of course, at sea you have anti-ship missiles, but we're going to deal with that problem a little later on. So keep in mind, if we had ESM assets, we could actually detect these aircraft based on the fact that they are emitting right now. So I'm going to go ahead and shut that off real quick. And let's see if we patrol. And got them. Nice. Let's see what altitude guide. This one was one of our low altitude aircraft. Immediately picked them up. Now, one thing worth noting here, I'm going to go ahead and unpause real quick. I'll leave it at 2x, is you can dictate how many aircraft engage at a time. So one thing I like to actually do is spread my flights out so each aircraft grabs its own target. This might not be a preferred depending on the kind of target, so kind of keep that in the back of your head. Really durable targets, you're going to need to attack with more flights at a time. But the key element here is there's enough targets here for everybody to get their own taste of everything. So now they're all going to come rushing in. Man, that worked effectively. Wow. What's the altitude of these guys anyway? 4,000 feet. Wow, that meant our high altitude guys are going to have to drop out of the sky in order to engage all these. I'm probably going to lose every single one of these P-51s. Yeah, that's how that's going to end. Now, one cool thing worth noting here is at any time I could have come over here, gone into the screen, grabbed some aircraft that weren't related to this mission. Say, for example, these F-4s. Actually, let's get the F-89s. Those are more fun to play with. I could grab these aircraft and assign them to the mission immediately. And in doing so, they would instantly launch and actually engage the targets that we are missing at this particular time. Oh, that was rough. Here comes some F-89s. Now, the F-89, they do have some radar. It's not the greatest radar. But at the very least, notice they're engaging targets. Yeah, here they go. Now, this was actually kind of fun because F-89s used to actually mount missiles in the nose, which I thought was crazy. It is a two-seater. It is not the highest performance thing. But again, it's just kind of neat to watch how we're able to basically hand that intercept off. And I have no doubt that many B-29s are going to get through to their target. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense as far as how to use them as kind of a early warning system. Again, mind the clouds. Let's take a look at how to use them as a barrier. So in this scenario, it's exactly the same as we just saw a minute ago. The only thing different, though, is I'm actually going to tell that neat little carrier over there to kind of do its thing for us. So let's go ahead and grab ourselves some Yak 38s. Everything else is in good shape. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and close the screen. Let's go back to Blue 4. Now, let's say we've got some intelligence that says that there's an enemy carrier group somewhere out here that is going to be using weapons that have a range of about 25 nautical miles to try to attack our airfields here. Well, if we do it that way, we can basically predict roughly where they're going to have to strike from. They're going to have to be coming in here. It's safe to say that in real Israel, as well as in this scenario, there's a lot of SAM sites along here, so they're not going to be in that big of a rush. I, again, am going to shut off that early warning radar just to make things interesting for us. Because of this radar's efficiency, we can actually see them coming and then just intercept them. We don't even need a patrol. But the SAMs are still nice to have. Anyway, so we know they're going to be coming somewhere in this direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up basically a barrier cap. There's a couple different ways to do this, but I'll show you the way that I like to do it. I'm going to go ahead and create myself 2 points here. I'm going to call this bar cap. This, of course, for people who played Falcon, they're familiar with this strategy as well. I'm going to go ahead and scroll here. I'm going to get myself some, I'm actually going to pause real quickly. I'm going to get myself some F4s. I believe I have some F4Es. Perfect. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set them, instead of movement style random with an area, I'm going to set them to a repeatable loop. Now, here's where the magic happens. Actually, I'm going to leave those selected. You'll see why. I'm going to build myself a prosecution area. Now, a prosecution area is basically where this particular group of aircraft are allowed to engage targets. So I'm going to set that prosecution area basically from here to here. I think that bar cap is actually a little too far away, if you ask me. No, 15 nautical miles, that's about right. So what this does is this establishes a zone that these aircraft will engage in. So that means any aircraft that is detected is going to be checked out in this zone. But if there are no enemy aircraft to be engaged and no enemy aircraft have been detected, my aircraft are going to be going on this repeatable barrier cap. Now keep in mind the total distance here is about 33 nautical miles. That's plenty within the range of an F4 Phantom. Now I happen to know this is going to be a seaborne strike, which is usually a safe bet that they're going to use some kind of low altitude aircraft. Now in the old days, aircraft did not have the ability to basically pick targets out below them from any ground clutter. The F4 Phantom has a pulse Doppler filtering, mouthful, that has the ability to basically look down, shoot down, that is to say, to engage targets that are below it, because it can see down below it. Some radar systems can't, which means you're going to have to find some way to trade off what altitude you're going to patrol at against being able to see targets that are below you. This is a real problem with especially Soviet aircraft, especially in the first half of the Cold War. So anyway, let's go ahead and unpause. Let's check our F4s real quick. I want to make sure everybody's happy. Hey, there's my MiG-25s. I should just send them out there just for fun, right? F-51s. Where did I put my F4s? Oh, there they are. Let's double check to make sure everything's set correctly. Looks good. By the way, in order for this technique to work with the prosecution zone, you need to make sure you have this enabled right here so they actually leave the patrol zone and stay in the prosecution zone. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn active emissions in the prosecution zone, and I'm going to double check to make sure they're allowed to use air-to-air guns, because I don't want them wasting time if I don't have to. And that should do it. The other thing worth checking out, though, is your weapons release authorization. You want to make sure these old school aircraft have the ability to engage properly. One thing I did not change was the size of the flight that I was using here. Looks like I'm using sections of 2, which is actually not that bad. But what I am going to do is I'm going to grab some of these sections of 2, and I'm going to spread them out along that cap so I have continuous coverage all the way down that line at all times. Look at how beautiful that is. Oh, we've already acquired some targets. Let's go back here. Double check to make sure that you're not engaging with too many aircraft at a time. Because last thing you want to do is bunch up on these decoys while everybody else shows up from the side. That's a really common human tactic. It's basically kiting. Alright, you guys are investigating awfully slowly here. Just take a look. Oh, no, they're moving pretty quick, I should say. Alright. Uh-oh, we're getting some jamming. Oh, we got them. Now, the reason we lost them is because we had such a difficult time seeing below us at distances that close. So what I'm actually going to do is modify my mission so that my station altitude is a little bit lower, so I'm less likely to lose altitude, or less likely to miss that from coming up in the future. Let's go ahead. We got another group coming in. Of course, if I wanted to be a little more aggressive, I could do one of these things, but that's very difficult to do in certain scenarios. Again, this is without early warning radar. Oh, one's got to get through. Yeah, that one would have got through. Keep in mind the reason our aircraft are so limited in speed is because we're dealing with low altitudes. If we were operating at high altitudes, we have a much, much easier time of engaging these aircraft. Sometimes what you can do is you can actually grab an aircraft, order it up to max altitude, max speed, build up enough speed that you can actually climb over the target, and then you can come back over them again. That's a good intercept strategy if you need it. You can see a group did sneak through as we were too busy engaging these other guys. Fortunately, there was one group of Phantoms that seemed to be doing a decent job of it. Get him, get him, get him! Nice. Come on, you can do it. That guy's toast. Toast. Oh, there's some more. Watch out. Oh, range-only radars. Oh, that's so lame. So these guys have their fun, and nobody got through. And now when they're all done, check this out. They're going to go over to this barrier, and they're going to start going back and forth again. I'm actually going to order that one guy to go to the opposite side of the barrier. Oh, there's one on the run. So that way, every time they turn, they have a good look. You can, by the way, make this line absolutely nutty, which is an awesome way to do anti-submarine patrols and stuff like that. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Of course, the last question, which probably most people have, is what if I have a carrier action group? Well, it's the same principle as you saw back there with one added little benefit. If you define an area, let me go and deselect everybody real quick. Let's say I define this is my area or something like that. You can actually program these little points here in the air, these reference points that I'm using for missions, to be moving relative or fixed to the carrier action group itself. So check this out. So now if I order my carrier action group to go that way, watch what happens. Notice this points in these mission areas now will stay over in that direction. All right, so hopefully this has been kind of helpful. Again, it's all about how you set up those missions and weighing how many aircraft I have at a given time versus how long they can stay in the air versus what kind of weapons do they have. Obviously, these Phantoms have had a lovely day today. Look at this. Bam. Got the entire deck's worth of them, which is very impressive, except for the couple that did sneak away. But I don't think any more than that actually got through. No, not bad. So just to leave you off, we're going to have a quick little fireworks here, which is always kind of fun to do. Let's load up the mission one more time. And this time we'll switch to the bad guys, or whatever the equivalent is. We don't know if they're bad or not. And let's grab everybody. Oh boy. So what are you supposed to do in this sort of a situation? Well, you'll see. Let's go ahead and unpause that real quickly. This time I've left on my air defense radars to make my life a little bit simpler. So when this kind of a situation comes and you do have some good interception capabilities, it's a lot of times worthwhile. Like you can see that these guys are clearly decoying out. It's a good idea to intercept things manually and actually do it by group. If I know these are all attack planes because of their missions or something like that, I can of course launch them. Another technique you can use, and I'm not really a fan of this technique, but it works fairly well, is you could basically create two different air defense zones. You could have kind of the outer ring and you could have an inner ring. So I'm going to call this my inner ring. Go ahead and set this to patrol. We'll leave it as AAW patrol. I'm going to need maximum firepower in my inner ring, so I'm going to increase the section size a little bit. I'm going to grab all of my I'm going to leave my F-89s alone. Those are pretty useful. I am going to grab my F-51s, though. And, of course, we're going to get everybody airborne, because you know how this game is going to be played. And I'm going to shut these two off because I don't need them. So then once you have your inner ring, you can, of course, define an outer ring. So what I usually like to do with the inner versus outer technique is I use my inner ring as the patrol zone for my outer ring, and then use my outer ring as the prosecution zone. So let's do outer ring here. Do patrol. AAW sounds good. Let's grab everybody else. Obviously, those Tomcats are somewhere else right now. That looks good. Grab it. Send everybody in the air. Double check your doctrine, by the way. Yep, you want this. You want this to be set. I want firepower, so I want large groups like this. So that is going to be actually my prosecution area. My patrol area is going to be that area in the middle. Let's go ahead and remove all these points, just like we did a second ago. And we'll add all those points. Bingo. So this is where we're going to engage. If we see them, this is where we're going to hang out and basically return to every single time. Keep in mind, we do have our air defense radars working, so this is going to be a little bit simpler of an engagement this time. I just want to check one more time real quickly what my size of my groups are. That looks good. I'm going to go ahead and unpause. I'm going to go to my weapons release. Double check to make sure they're programmed to use guns, because you're going to need everything during this particular engagement. That looks good to me. That looks good to me. Oh, this is going to get nutty pretty quick. All right, watch this. I'm probably not going to let this get all the way to the end because I have a feeling command's going to start slowing down in about 30 seconds. You can take off any time now. Hopefully you didn't just, there we go. Now notice our prosecution guys immediately turn towards their zone while everybody else is kind of hanging out. The moment, of course, they touch the tip of this, they're going to freak out and basically start engaging very aggressively. Oh, we got some people coming towards the north also. Oh, this is going to get messy very quickly. And the fireworks have already begun. I'm just going to declare you guys hostile. I'm going to declare you guys hostile because obviously they are. Not necessarily. And now I get to use SAMs that actually help me out for once. I feel like you never get to be on the team that uses the SAMs. I feel like you're always on the killing SAMs team. But they're actually fairly effective. Of course, the real problem is going to be coming out of Egypt here, and that's where I'm getting a little nervous. Turn that down a little bit. You don't need to hear that loud. Oh boy. This is going to go bad. It'll be kind of entertaining, but it's going to go bad pretty quick. Oh, geez. Of course, our Hawk batteries up in northern Israel there are having a hell of a time of it. All right, looking pretty good, looking pretty good. Wow, look at that spam. Yep, notice they're cleverly beaming the old school pulse Doppler radar in order to get into that notch filter. It is an effective technique. Ooh, nasty. And we've got even more coming out of that. Now, notice these are F-51s. They're basically just kind of tooling around our central zone, while these guys are kind of doing all the real work. Probably not a bad idea to start deploying a couple of them. Looks like, no, it's going to be an even mix. I'm actually going to order that one right to that side. I'm going to order these guys immediately to go over there. Oh, boy. The real fun's coming. Hey, you guys, break it up. Break it up. All right, everybody hit their afterburners and go here, please. Yep, that's exactly what they're doing. Oh, I have MiG-25s. You're going to pick out the MiG-25 by the fact they're going to get here like a line like my mouse is. It's amazing how fast they are. Notice they prioritize the closest target first, which is actually really, really handy. What you probably want to do, though, is grab this group here, and you want to order them to engage the target that's over here versus the one that they're engaging there, because otherwise they're going to get a little carried away. All right, spread them out just a little bit. I still see an enormous amount of angry aircraft coming in that direction, so I'm going to grab my two groups of F-51s. Not that they're going to get there in time, but we're going to ask them nicely. Oh man, this would be a nightmare if this occurred in the real world. I don't know what these guys are doing hanging out so much. They're probably looking for a better target. Meanwhile, our SAM batteries they're getting paid this week. They're going to make their Christmas bonus. There goes our F-51s, desperately trying to do something. I don't think they're going to be terribly successful. This is when you really wish you had more aircraft to help us out with, but this is what we got. And those poor F-51s, they can't even get high enough in order to actually engage the target with their machine guns. Man, they really don't like us. They sent everybody. Uh-oh, here comes their bombs. Oh, I never am on the receiving end. This feels so weird. Alright, hopefully this video has been helpful to everybody. I'm sure you guys want to see what our losses and expenditures look like after that initial little fireworks there. I haven't lost anything, but I managed to get like 30 aircraft already. So I'm having a pretty good day. Alright, if you have any questions as usual, I'll throw them down in there. Like I said, I will provide you guys with this little sheet if you want to play with it. It's really not much, but sometimes it helps you to kind of visualize sort of what you're trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, if you have a very, very fast missile and radar armed aircraft, you can spread that cap out really far. If you're dealing with a scenario where you know that this Russian, say, a very, very large bomber force is going to be engaging your carriers, you've really got to get that cap basically to supplement your regular radar in order to be effective at all. Also, don't forget that if your aircraft fly lower, they're going to have an easier time detecting targets with radar. If they fly higher, they're going to be able to stay in the air longer. So if you ever need to figure that calculation out, it's just a matter of taking how much fuel they have, dividing by how much fuel they're going to be using. Enjoy.